Hey, what's going on, guys? The Horror Man back with a random wrestling review of WWF Royal Rumble 1994. Royal Rumble 1994 is special to me because I was there, in the audience, live. It was held on Saturday night, January 22nd, 1994, in Providence, Rhode Island. It was the last Royal Rumble to be held on a Saturday night, up until 2022. For this Royal Rumble event, the commentary table was not ringside. It was located practically in the crowd, where Vince McMahon was joined by Ted DiBiase for commentary. Like Vince McMahon and Jerry the King Lawler, Vince and the $1 Million Man had great chemistry. There's a lot of back and forth between the two of them throughout the night. The dark match before the main card featured the Brooklyn Brawler defeating Jim Powers with a swinging neckbreaker. After that, McMahon welcomed everyone to Royal Rumble 1994 and was then joined by the $1 Million Man. Vince then promoted 3 title matches that would take place during the event. The opening bell rings and Tatanka's entrance music plays. The crowd goes wild. He was hugely popular at this point. In fact, prior to this match, he had only suffered 1 loss to Ludwig Borga after he used a chair. The two were in the middle of a heated rivalry, and this was supposed to be a rematch. Unfortunately, Borga had an ankle injury and was unable to compete. He never did return to the WWF even after he healed, and the feud between him and Tatanka was never resolved. Bam Bam Bigelow replaced Ludwig Borga in this match, and he was accompanied to the ring by Luna Vachon. The wrestlers went back and forth for a bit before Tatanka jumped off the top rope, landing on Bam Bam for the pin. It was a short match and seemed a bit rushed, in my opinion, especially the finish. Either way, Tatanka added yet another win to his impressive resume. We are then shown a promo narrated by Todd Pettengill of the events leading up to the next match. We see an interview between Vince McMahon and Owen Hart from a month earlier, in which Owen challenges his brother Bret to a fight. Then Vince interviewed Bret, asking if he accepted the challenge, and he declines. Bret declares he will not face his brother. After that, we are taken to the locker room, where Bret and Owen are together and have seemingly resolved their issues. They seem pumped and confident for their match with the Quebecers. The Quebecers had won their tag team titles back a week prior from Marty Jannetty and the 1-2-3 Kid, who had beaten the Quebecers for the belts a week before that. Now, the Hart brothers, Bret and Owen, would be getting a title shot. It's 2 Canadian tag teams facing off for the tag team championship. Bret and Owen enter the ring first, and the crowd roars at the sound of Bret Hart's entrance music. Bret and Owen both give their sunglasses to young fans in the audience. It's interesting seeing Owen Hart as a face. For now. Vince keeps pushing the narrative of this being Owen's big night to finally win a WWF championship. And that's what the Rocket really wants, to win gold once and for all. Of course, we know that's not happening yet. There are lots of incidental referee distractions in this match. At one point, Owen locks in a sharpshooter, but the ref is distracted by Bret incidentally. Vince says again, the Rocket, so determined to be the tag team champion. McMahon is really selling it here. This match goes on much longer than the previous between Tatanka and Bam Bam Bigelow. The Quebecers do damage to Bret's knee outside the ring as the ref is distracted time and time again. They even use chairs and other weapons to cause more damage. Finally, back in the ring after some time, Bret attempts a sharpshooter, but collapses before he can lock it in. The injured knee angle is getting played up hard. The referee stops the match due to Bret's injury and awards the titles back to the Quebecers. They retain the belts, and Owen loses his mind. First, he blames the ref, while DiBiase blames Bret Hart. The $1 Million Man claims Bret should have tagged Owen into the match, even though Bret couldn't get to him. Of course, McMahon is defending the excellence of execution. Owen then starts yelling at Bret, who can barely stand up. When he finally does pull himself to his feet using the ring ropes, Owen kicks out his brother's knee. The heel turn is complete. As Owen heads to the locker room, he says to the camera, "He's so damn selfish. Why didn't he tag me?" Ted DiBiase is hamming up this heel turn as McMahon shames Owen for his remarks. McMahon then hints that Bret will not be in the Royal Rumble due to his injured knee. Here comes the story building. A bunch of WWF personnel head into the ring to check on Bret, and he's ultimately taken out on a stretcher. Todd Pettengill interviews Owen in the locker room, where Owen once again calls Bret selfish. Meanwhile, Vince and Ted argue back and forth about the Hart brothers. Next up is the Intercontinental Championship match between champion Razor Ramon and challenger Irwin R. Shyster, or IRS. Jim Ross and Gorilla Monsoon are the commentators for this match. IRS comes out first, trash-talking the crowd on the microphone. The audience absolutely erupts for Razor's entrance, and he gets a standing ovation. Jim Ross even specifically mentions this. Along with his presence, Razor Ramon really did have some great entrance music. He enters the ring, does his little celebration, and throws the toothpick from his mouth in IRS's face. Leading up to this title match, IRS had been carrying around a briefcase containing Razor Ramon's stolen gold chain. He brought the briefcase with him to this match as well. I always found it funny that Irwin wrestled wearing suspenders and a tie. That couldn't have been comfortable. I gotta say, he was super entertaining though. He really played the villain role well. At one point, the ref gets in the way when IRS attempts to throw Razor Ramon into the turnbuckle. The referee gets crushed in between and is inevitably knocked unconscious. Funny how the refs are made of glass, it seems. I know, kayfabe. With the ref down, IRS attempts to hit Razor with the briefcase, but Razor avoids it and uses the briefcase on IRS instead. He covers him for the pinfall, but the ref is still out cold. Razor then attempts the Razor's Edge, but Shawn Michaels runs out from the locker rooms and hits Razor in the head with the vacated Intercontinental title. Yes, there were two Intercontinental belts at this time. One that Shawn Michaels had vacated, and the other that Razor Ramon had subsequently won. Jim Ross yells, "The referee has not even moved." Imagine that. With Razor Ramon now knocked out because of the hit in the head from the belt, IRS crawls over and covers the champion. Suddenly, the ref comes to and counts slowly 1, 2, 3. As IRS starts celebrating, holding up the Intercontinental title, which he just won, it's interesting that no music plays. All of a sudden, another referee rushes into the ring and tells the other ref what happened. Then, even though the match was over, so we thought, Razor hits the Razor's Edge on IRS and pins him, retaining the title. This time, Razor Ramon's music does play as he celebrates holding up both Intercontinental Championship belts. So listen, it's cool and all. The crowd loved it. But I have to admit, I was a bit disappointed at the time. And I was sort of disappointed this time rewatching it. Don't get me wrong, I was a Razor Ramon fan, but I just would have liked to have seen IRS keep the title that he pretty much won whether it was by hook or by crook. How many other title changes have we seen over the years due to someone cheating, and the results don't get reversed? Something about it just felt too manufactured. I know. Kayfabe. Next up, we get a promo for the next match with Paul Bearer and The Undertaker. This, in fact, may be one of my all-time favorite promos. It's super atmospheric. The Undertaker is shown building a casket for the casket match he's about to have with Yokozuna. Paul Bearer was great with his high-pitched voice, and it's just a pretty amazing promo. I have no idea where it was filmed, but I love the setting. According to Jim Cornette previously, there was fine print in the contract of this WWF Championship match, making it a casket match, which Cornette felt gave The Undertaker the advantage over champion Yokozuna. Regardless, the match will play out as such. Vince and Ted are back on commentary for this one, as Yokozuna, even as the champion, enters first. He is escorted to the ring by Jim Cornette and Mr. Fuji. Then Paul Bearer comes out pushing the casket we saw in the promo, with the urn on top of it. The Undertaker follows. I gotta say, it was always so cool being there live when the lights went out and that music played for The Undertaker's entrance. Somehow, the Civic Center always felt colder in that moment. Yokozuna does a great job of looking concerned. He keeps staring at the casket, as if he's worried about being closed up in there. By the way, as you watch the match, you can tell how early on this was for The Undertaker, based on his tattoos, or should I say, lack of. With this being a casket match, there is no disqualification, so chairs are used, and Yokozuna throws salt in The Undertaker's eyes. While they battled outside the ring, it was funny seeing people in the front row. Styles sure have changed since the 90s. At one point, the crowd starts cheering, USA, USA, and I remember doing that myself. Yokozuna makes the first attempt to put The Undertaker in the casket, but Taker is standing, so he cannot close the lid. The Undertaker manages to chokeslam Yokozuna in the ring, which was a big feat. Anytime The Undertaker was down on his back, Paul Bearer would raise the urn in the air from outside the ring, and The Undertaker would sit up like Michael Myers. DiBiase questions, what is it about that urn that allows The Undertaker to keep getting up? Finally, it appears as if The Undertaker is about to become WWF champion when he puts Yokozuna in the casket. But as he attempts to close the lid, Crush attacks him. Then Kabuki comes out and attacks. Then Bam Bam Bigelow. Then Tenryu, Atom Bomb, the Head Shrinkers, Jeff Jarrett, and even Diesel join in. Meanwhile, on the outside of the ring, Mr. Fuji steals the urn from Paul Bearer. Paul quickly takes it back, though, knocking out both Fuji and Cornette with it. Every time he raises the urn, The Undertaker keeps getting up. He fights off his assailants as they try to close him in the casket. Then, Yokozuna steals the urn and punches Paul Bearer off the ring apron. But when the champion opens it up, green smoke starts pouring out. I have to say, it's a pretty cool effect. Vince screams, it appears as though the power of the urn is escaping. The attackers finally get The Undertaker in the casket and shut it. Yokozuna has retained his title, and he is still the WWF World Champion. They all start pushing the casket back to the locker room with them, as Yokozuna follows. But suddenly, The Undertaker's music hits, and green smoke starts pouring out of the casket. The lights go out, and an image of The Undertaker in the casket appears on the Titantron. His eyes open, and he recites a typical Undertaker diatribe from inside. Suddenly, it looks like he's levitating above the screen, and Vince goes wild. He shouts in his typical McMahon voice, "The Undertaker is levitating here in Providence, Rhode Island." Next, we get a promo of contestants claiming they're going to win the Royal Rumble. Vince and Ted specifically talk about Lex Luger being in the match. McMahon once again questions if Bret Hart will be in the Rumble, though. Still building. Howard Finkel is in the ring, explaining the rules of the Royal Rumble. He had such a great announcer voice. Vince says that due to time constraints, contestants will be entering every 90 seconds, as opposed to every 2 minutes, like in the past. There's a Casio clock in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, and as always, the crowd counts down from 10 every time a new contestant is about to enter the ring. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire Royal Rumble match here, but I will list all of the entrants and in the order in which they entered. I will mention a few details along the way, though, of course. Scott Steiner drew number 1, so he's the first in the ring, followed by head shrinker Samu, who drew number 2. 90 seconds later, Rick Steiner comes in at number 3, followed by Quang at number 4. Quang would go on to be Savio Vega, of course. Owen Hart comes in at number 5, followed by Bart Gunn, one of the toughest guys in WWF history, by the way. Seriously. Remember the Brawl for All? I'm sure I'll get to that tournament eventually. I'd love to anyway. Diesel comes in at number 7, and that's when things get a little crazy. He clears the ring. He's all by himself and waits for the number 8 entry, who happens to be Bob Backlund. Backlund almost eliminates Diesel, but Diesel gets the best of him and throws him over the top rope. Billy Gunn comes in next, and Diesel throws him out too. Tossed. Once again, Diesel is all alone, waiting for his next contestant. This is very reminiscent of Royal Rumble 1997, or should I say, the 97 Rumble was very reminiscent of this one. Instead of Diesel in 97, though, it was Stone Cold Steve Austin cleaning house and waiting for the next entrant. But I'm sure I'll eventually get to that one too. At this point, a camera backstage shows us Lex Luger being attacked by Kabuki and Chinru. Vince asks, now what kind of condition is Luger in? Building. Coming in the Royal Rumble at number 10 is Virgil, who we learn from McMahon was an alternate for Kamala. He is promptly sent over the top rope by Diesel. McMahon asks, who's gonna stop this huge monster? Macho Man comes out next, and the crowd goes wild. DiBiase calls him Macho Mouth. He's followed by Jeff Jarrett 90 seconds later, and Crush 90 seconds after that. Doink the Clown comes in next, accompanied by Dink. This was the Ray Apollo Doink, by the way. Matt Bourne was out of the WWF at this point. Bam Bam Bigelow is in at number 15. He comes out with Luna Vachon by his side once again. Mabel comes out accompanied by Oscar, and then Sparky Plug, who would eventually become Bob Holly. Come on, Vince. Sparky Plug? Really? Apparently, the full gimmick was Thurman Sparky Plug. So silly. He replaced an injured 1-2-3 Kid, by the way. At this point, Vince and Ted mention both Bret Hart and Lex Luger being out of the Rumble. Still building. Shawn Michaels is in at number 18, followed by Mo and Greg the Hammer Valentine. Tatanka is next, and then the Great Kabuki. Number 23 is a big one, as Lex Luger enters the Royal Rumble. Chinru comes in at 24, but as the Casio clock counts down for entrant number 25, no one comes out of the locker room. Vince hams it up once again, assuming it must have been Bret Hart's number, and he's too injured to enter. At the same time, he keeps pushing Lex Luger being in the Rumble. The model Rick Martel comes in at number 26, and then at number 27, Bret Hart comes limping out. Vince McMahon proclaims, "What guts for Bret Hart." Right now you might be thinking, if Bret was number 27, then who was number 25 when no one came to the ring? Vince lets us know it was Bastion Booger, who apparently couldn't compete due to illness. It's also worth noting that when Lex Luger came out at number 23, he ran to the ring and did not appear injured at all. Bret Hart, however, came limping out, like I said. At number 28 came head shrinker Fatu, and 29 was Marty Jannetty. There are a lot of wrestlers still in the Rumble at this point, and that's when Vince made a comment that I laughed at. He shouts, "Look at this! The whole ring is filled with humanity." The final entrant in Royal Rumble 94 is Adam Bomb, and Vince says, "Adam Bomb's gonna win the Royal Rumble." Stop it, Vince. No, he's not. This is also when McMahon tells us number 25 was Bastion Booger, who got a little sick and couldn't come out. That's how he phrased it. More eliminations happen, and we are left with our final four: Bret Hart, Lex Luger, Shawn Michaels, and head shrinker Fatu. Let's be honest, Fatu isn't winning this. The other three, however, are all realistic candidates. Of course, what we end up with is maybe the most infamous ending in Royal Rumble history. Lex Luger and Bret Hart go over the top rope together and allegedly both hit the mat at the same exact time. Of course, after showing countless replays from different angles, there is still no conclusive evidence. At first, Vince says he thinks Luger threw Bret out. DiBiase responds by saying, "I hate to say it, but I think Bret threw Luger out." Lex Luger is announced as the winner first, and his music plays, to a good crowd reaction. A second referee claims Bret won, and he's announced the winner, and the crowd erupts at his music being played. Lex has his hand raised, and the crowd boos. Sorry, Lex. Bret has his hand raised, and the crowd cheers. Eventually, both men are announced as co-winners of the 1994 Royal Rumble. Vince questions which of the two men will go on to face Yokozuna for the WWF Championship at WrestleMania. Luger and Hart shake hands in the ring, and the event concludes with a montage of highlights of the night. For those of you unaware, the co-winner angle was used to gauge crowd reaction. Lex Luger was in the middle of a huge push at the time, but he wasn't getting the reaction the WWF hoped for. They wanted to see the crowd's reaction when he was announced as the winner, as opposed to when Bret Hart was announced as the winner. Obviously, Bret got the better reaction from the audience, and the rest is history. I guess I should feel a little responsible for Luger not getting the title. Well, not me personally, but my local crowd. On a side note, years later, I would go on to work security for Bret Hart and Mick Foley at a local event. I even went out to dinner with Bret and some friends. We had some steaks and hung out for a few hours. Great memory. So that's it, guys. That was Royal Rumble 94. It's pretty cool that I got to be there live for what I think is the most infamous Royal Rumble finish in history. Overall, it was a pretty good card and a fun Royal Rumble match. And because I was there, it will always be special to me. Did you watch Royal Rumble 94? If so, what did you think of it? Comment below and let me know. Also, if you'd like for me to continue these random wrestling reviews, tell me that in the comments as well. Leave some suggestions for future reviews too. I'd love to know which events you think I should cover. Thanks for watching, guys. Hit that thumbs up and be kind. Subscribe.